All right. James Bond has been acquired by Jeff Bezos. Da-na-na. I mean, this is the no-brainer acquisition, isn't it? $9 billion or so. James Bond has made like $10 billion historically. Like, it's just a no-brainer that they would buy this, right?
Shocking that those geniuses at Amazon negotiated a really nice M&A deal. I mean, I've never heard of them having a very favorable terms acquisition before. This is brand new news. Of course, it's not. They are notoriously unbelievable negotiators. And they definitely found a way to, I believe, get this asset on super opportunistic
It's amazing
terms.
It hadn't been picked up yet. I mean, the MGM has been around the block so many times. Back when I was a media investment banker in New York, right out of undergrad, and MGM. This was in 2007, 2008. MGM was getting shopped around all the time. Then I can't believe a major media company hadn't picked it up yet.
Well, I mean,
huge move for Amazon.
$8.45 billion is the official price. And if you just look at James Bond, I was thinking about this and I just did some Google searches, 27 films over 58 years. Okay. So this is a 6-decade franchise. Star Wars was 77. So you had the 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts, 2010. So that also is, I guess, about to hit.
Were you telling us when you went on our pod that you had like pirated The Empire Strikes Back or something?
Yeah, that was my original business, was Jason's Hot Tapes.
Yeah.
I had started my first business was Jason's Hot Tapes, and I literally had a bootleg copy of The Empire Strikes Back, and I just kept bootlegging it worse and worse. You could barely watch it. But, some guy owed my dad money he lost in poker or backgammon, and in exchange, these guys at like one of the theaters in Bensonhurst would set up 10 VHS tapes, and they would start the movie and they would literally run and hit the record button right down the line and then take the tapes out, run the movie again, doom, 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 doom. And they would just make, in one day, because they literally stole off a truck a copy of The Empire Strikes Back. Nobody knows where that tape was. I mean, there were all kinds of scams like this. I mean, the other one we were doing was I had met a guy from one of my friends in 6th grade, and then he wanted copies of like Chessmaster, and then when we were like in 8th or 9th grade, we started pirating Chessmaster for PC, and he would give us like $1. So we would go steal floppy disks, which cost $3, from like a store. We'd literally steal them. And then we would make copies of this, and we take the 5-finger discount, and then actually we negotiated more like $5 because I think Chessmaster was $50. So we would give it to $5. He would sell it for $10, and we would just sit there, and every time the disc would come out of the machine, in 20 minutes of copying it, we'd be like, well, there's $5. Well, there's $5. Well, there's $5. It was like we were counting out 5 1/4-inch floppies. But enough of my life of crime,
Young Jason
which will
today
be in
would
the
be
book.
slanging Doge.
Oh God! I mean, I literally could have been Lex Luthor if I had pursued that path. Thank the Lord the internet happened and I had a place to put this. But worldwide box office, if you adjust it for inflation, $14 billion. The last 4 films with Daniel Craig, who I think is kind of the best Bond ever. We'll rate Bonds in a second. $2.9 billion box office. And it's currently the 4th highest grossing franchise worldwide. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, $22 billion. Go ahead.
Skyfall alone did over $1.1 billion in revenue, and it only cost $150 million to make. I mean, these are cash cows.
I mean, and I don't know how Daniel Craig is like, I'm getting old, and they just like 150 million, 300. I think he's getting, I'll ask my researchers to look it up, but I thought he got 150 million for the last 2 films or 300 million. I can't remember if it was, for some reason, the number 150, and he was like, I am out. I hate this role. And when I saw him say that publicly, I'm like, he's good for 2 more. Like, that's the move on the way
he's
out.
Negotiating up. That's what he's doing.
Yes. When you say, I am done with this, I hate this character, that means you got 2 left, right? Because you're poisoning the well, but, you're kind of like, there is a number.
You're open to getting paid.
Exactly. Yeah. Like when Robert Downey Jr. says, I hate Iron Man, he's doing 4 more.
Yeah.
That's basically how it goes. Marvel Cinematic Universe has done $22 billion across like 8,000 movies at this point. Star Wars, $10 billion. Harry Potter, sadly, I know you guys love this, you millennials, but that piece of garbage made $9 billion.
Went off the deep end. Like,
did she? I mean, I don't know.
God, David, don't do this.
Okay, we can't go there.
Do we want to get into
no
women
Let's use our time wisely.
fighting for women's rights against trans people? 3 white guys? Should we go there?
Okay, yeah, let's not go there.
Okay, let's not go. Let's stay in our lane. Don't want to talk about feminism and trans rights? Okay, great. Let's stick on Bond, something we know. Who's the best Bond? Let's just start there.
Oh.
Give me your number
Sean Connery.
one, your number two.
How on earth could anybody not say Sean? Daniel Craig close too, but Sean, come on, Sean Connery.
I respect that. David?
I agree. I've got such a soft spot for Pierce Brosnan for two reasons, though, just because that's what I grew up with. And two...
Well, he did like two of them, right?
GoldenEye 64 is the number one Bond-related media property in history. I put so many thousands of hours.
So literally, your Bond
game.
decision is based upon the guy who they blocked from doing the role, and he did like one great video game.
One of the best video games of all time.
Okay,
the quality of that video game, I would argue, is infinitely higher than any individual Bond movie.
What? Wow,
you're out of your mind. You're so out of your mind. Also, Pierce Brosnan is definitively the worst Bond, no doubt.
It's all about
like, give me George Lazenby any day.
Okay, everybody, there it is. The Acquired podcast has ended. Breaking news. They've broken up. I'm going to take one of them for... One of them's going to the All-In Pod as an alternate, and one of them's going to go as This Week in Startups. That's the end of the podcast. You're all getting refunds on your pro accounts. All right, let me correct you guys. Now, when I was growing up, my first Bond was Roger Moore. So I believed, like Lauren Michael says from SNL, whichever cast you grew up on is your favorite cast. Just like whatever album you grew up on or period of music is the best music ever. I grew up on Roger Moore, and I have a soft spot for him. But when I look back on it historically, he was suave, but he wasn't dark. And then I look at Sean Connery, and he was suave and I think more masculine and stronger as a Bond.
Oh, and he could fight.
And he could fight.
Connery, he was
a scoundrel, so you had a little bit more of that. But he wasn't dark. He wasn't super dark.
Although
and then
he's
you have Daniel.
A badass. Like
he's a badass. It's hard to
be more badass,
but
than
with
Sean
a smile,
Connery.
right? Like he would push you into a pool of sharks and wink, but he wasn't going to shoot you in the back or the stomach and watch you bleed out. And that's why I have come to the conclusion that the best Bond, the most accurate Bond, is Daniel Craig because he is troubled, he is dark. In the same way, I look at Batman's today, where I felt for a period of time that. Like in terms of casting, you've got to think The Dark Knight is the best Batman of the series. But when you look back on the Batman that, what's his name? Gosh, why is it not coming to me? That was the one I grew up. Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton is just an incredible actor. Incredible actor. And his Batman could have been the best Batman, I believe, if they had made the series darker. But when they made it sort of comic booky with Jack Nicholson,
it
was a little too campy. So I have to go with obviously the Dark Knight series.
It's so weird. You're not even talking about Ben Affleck.
Actually, did you guys see the Snyder cut? I mean,
it was even worse than the original cut.
No, you're crazy. Oh my God.
No, the 4x3 thing really bothered me.
That
it was like a
weird.
tick that I couldn't shake.
That was very weird.
The story was better, though. You're right.
The story was so much better. The character development was so much better. The Flash was so much better. Cyborg was so much better. It just goes to show it's like founder authority versus a hired gun CEO. Like you really felt that kind of switch. So for Amazon, this is just another awesome acquisition in the mold of their Whole Foods. Like, how did somebody else not get this?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's old IP, right? I was looking at the names of a lot of these films. It's Bond, it's Raging Bull, it's Silence the Lambs. Yeah, like none of this is new. So it is effectively, I think it's two things. It's one, hey, we finally have a back catalog in Amazon Prime Video that's not our originals, that we own outright, that we're not borrowing and competing every year to license and fighting Netflix, that sort of thing. But then it's also, we are going to, and I know this was a sticking point in the deal, so I'm curious to see where it lands. We are going to do what Disney did with Marvel on Disney Plus and do a zillion shows. We are going to start repurposing the Bond IP, all of this different historically classic IP, Rocky, and figure out things to do in like brand new things to do with that IP in Amazon.
Absolutely. If you look, they own Stargate and RoboCop. And if you think about those two franchises, those would be amazing series to do a Stargate series again. Because Stargate was a great movie and a great series. RoboCop, incredible IP. just think about the world building you could do in RoboCop alone. That would be an amazing vehicle for a series. And I just want to give a shout out here to Dredd. I don't know if you guys saw the Dredd film from, I think it was 2009 or something. Dredd. This film is such a good dark science fiction film, and they've been talking about the 2020 film Dredd with Carl Urban becoming a series. Did you either of you happen to see this Dredd 2012?
No.
Is it?
Watch this Dredd. It is the great
Judge Dredd.
It is. So the Judge Dredd was comic booky. This is the Dark Knight version of Dredd. In other words,
the
true to
poster
the original
even looks
form.
like the Dark Knight.
When you see this film, it is so good. It has the woman Lena, what's her name from Lena Headey from Game of Thrones in it as the villain. It is amazing. It is like dark science fiction. Thank me later
cool.
to the audience.
But there's also there's such an easy win here. Like those are like the next wins that Amazon I'm sure capable of doing. The easy win here is like the operations of the Bond franchise have been so screwed up. Like these movies come out so slowly. Amazon's going to be able to clean that up, pump out a movie every 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Easy win.
Also, just think
you
about
could have gotten 10 out of Craig on Amazon's schedule.
Yeah.
Well, also think about, with an unlimited budget, and you think about that world. We know 007, but they've never really told the stories of any of the other Bonds. And I know this would be sacrilegious, I guess. But, they've been talking about this controversy of, what if Bond wasn't a white guy, right, basically? Why not tell the story of 5 or 6 different agents?
007 will not be a white guy in this upcoming movie.
In the new one? Did they cast that yet or no?
So Daniel Craig is still James Bond, but there is a 007 who is not a white man.
Oh, yes. Right. So they are already preparing the audience because he's retired or something, and she's now taken over. I knew they were talking about that.
I don't remember. I read the story like 6 months ago.
Yeah. So anyway, they've been talking about 007 being played by a woman or a different person, a different, whatever, a non-white English male. And so I think that's going to
be Idris Elba for years and years and years.
But why not?
That would have been so awesome.
Yeah. I mean, why not tell the story of the other 00 agents? Like if you think about world building, you think about Lord of the Rings, you think about what they did with Game of Thrones, like it need not be about 007. You could create a whole world here of the other agents and other jobs they were doing.
The MI6.
You could do MI6 and you could do a series MI6 that then dovetails and explain and builds fabric between all the movies. So imagine between Moonraker, and Skyfall and all these things, they could go back and forth to the 80s, to the 70s and do fan service between all the different Bonds.
Yeah, that would be that one will be such an interesting dance because unlike a Marvel Cinematic Universe or a Star Wars where they really do have an answer for everything, a lot of it's very hand-wavy in Bond where they're like, oh, well, it's always in the present. And that's why the technology always sort of evolves. And actually, all the Bonds, all these different actors, they're the same person, and they've always been the same age, and there's conflicts all over the place. And it would be an interesting job to be the person who is in charge of figuring out how to make this into a proper universe and create continuity with all the hand waving that they've done in the past.
Interesting. So there is a term for this. Is it recon or retcon?
Retroactively.
Conforming or something like that.
Retcon, noun, a piece of new information that imposes a different interpretation on previously described events, typically used to facilitate a dramatic plot shift or account for an inconsistency. Revise, an aspect of fictional work, retrospectively, typically to introduce a new piece of information that imposes a different interpretation. Right. Actually, I think that there was some retconning.
Disney did this with Star Wars. They decided that they named a certain set of art as canon, and there was non-canon, and if you were non-canon, then it's not part of the story.
Well, and remember, the criticism of Star Wars was they built the Death Star, and they left a hole in it that could blow up the whole thing. That's the stupidest thing ever. These are the smartest engineers. They can make a planet-sized weapon, and they left a hole in it. It's no. An engineer who was secretly built this flaw and gave it to his daughter So that whole thing with what's the movie?
That was
Rogue One.
Rogue One
Best-
is
Best Star Wars
literally the
movie.
best retcon ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
literally retconned the one floor in Star Wars.
Such a good
Congratulations to the Star Wars. I mean, I think of my
Beautiful,
favorite Star Wars
genius.
movies, that's got to be up there for me. I mean, just the Darth Vader scene at the end.
Oh my God.
Oh, so good. So good.
I literally
I think that was the
rewatched
most
that.
emotional I felt that year. that 10
Absolutely.
minutes.
Well,
So good.
I mean, you're
Can we talk?
kind
I was
of-
thinking about this the other day.
I don't want to say you have Asperger's, Ben, but you don't have a big emotional range if Darth Vader was your biggest emotional moment for the year. I mean, oh, yeah. He's like, actually, that one.
I'll back that up. This is great. But
David,
I was thinking about this the other day.
David, what was your biggest emotional moment of the year? Was it like a SpongeBob SquarePants moment, or was it like, what was it for you?
Oh man, I have to think about that. I don't know, but but the emotion I was feeling the other day was just I'm so sad and disappointed at how bad episode 9 was. You guys with
garbage.
me on this?
Garbage. You guys want to know the best tweet of my life? Best Twitter moment in 11 years on the platform, or whatever, 15 years? I said they should retcon the entire post-trilogy, get rid of 7, 8, 9, and redo it with Mark Hamill and show the story of the building of the Jedi Temple and give people what they want. And Mark Hamill liked it.
Oh wow!
I am not kidding.
You're making a case for a career transition into the.
There you go. There you go.
Content
Absolutely.
business.
Make me I was born to be a studio head. Absolutely, get me a humidor with cigars in it. I will throw people out of my office.
Amazon might be looking for somebody to run MGM.
I'll throw a MacBook out the window. I'll do whatever. I'll drive my car up on the sidewalk on a bush and park it there. I don't care. I'll be a studio head. Yeah, let's go.
You were born
These
to
things
do
all
this.
happen in Entourage.
I think so. Yeah, I would be a great studio head. I would make
Oh my
absolutely flippant
Somebody's got
decisions
to option
and take credit
your
for other
life
people's work.
into the Silicon
so
Valley
true.
version of Entourage
Oh my God,
with the besties.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
How good would that be?
Okay, yeah. Calling HBO if they want to if they want to create a series based on my insane life and punch it up 3 levels.
The Ari Emanuel going into the Ari Gold
God.
character.
So imagine that though. See, I think that's actually what's happening. If you remember at the end of The Mandalorian, you had Luke Skywalker show up and take Grogu, spoiler alert. And did you notice he was a fast Jedi at that point? Did you notice the speed he had was similar to Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan in the prequels? He was a fast Jedi, right? So the Jedi in Star Wars were all slow because they were old. And they had, Darth Vader was missing 3 limbs and was on life support. Obi-Wan was 80 years old. They were slow Jedi, and Luke was a new Jedi, so he barely knew how to use his lightsaber. So you watch those lightsaber battles, and it looks ridiculous. But when you go to the prequels, you remember how fast they are, and they're fighting drones that are shooting
Yoda
up
flips like 16 times to
Exactly.
make one saber strike.
Then you have the new series, and all of a sudden they're fast again. That's because Luke Skywalker became fast. Luke Skywalker becomes like a real fast Jedi, gets Grogu, and then Princess Leia becomes a Jedi, and then you just create an entirely new story and throw away 7, 8, 9.
I'm with you just because
Right in
9
the
was so
garbage.
bad. I liked 8 though. What did you think of 8?
I tried to like it. I just don't like when people are trying to do something other than tell a great story with great characters and aesthetics and dialogue and performance in movies. When they try to lecture you through the story, it breaks me out of the story. I'm like, please don't lecture me about being woke in the middle of Star Wars. Like, I get that all day long on Twitter. I'm not at the movies for you to scream at me like hysterical libs on Twitter or troll me like the right? Like, that's what they did with that movie. They're like, by the way, here's some other characters who haven't been represented before. And I'm like, I get it. Yes, I understand. Star Wars was made at a time when it was like only white people. I got it. Now you're making it, and it's just like a little bit tedious.
I really liked. Go ahead, Ben.
And the direction they took the story in because of that made no sense. Like the entire 25-minute segment on the Vegas planet, to just show that those wealthy people were financing the war. You're like, I
get it. Yes,
you could have done that in a one or two
agreed.
passing lines.
The thing though for me that I really liked about it though was the Rey is nobody thing. Like I thought that was great.
Yeah. The only thing I don't like about Rey is Nobody is that they head faked us into thinking she's Obi-Wan's child, she's Luke's child, she's the Emperor's child, she's a clone. I mean, they didn't actually know.
Right. I mean, this shows the dysfunction that was going on in the organization at that point.
Yeah.
My beef with the final trilogy is that it didn't have one single director. I actually would have been fine if it was JJ all the way through. The film I didn't like was 8. I actually liked 9 because if you're going to do 7 and 9 in that style, you're basically saying we're doing kind of a fun fan service reboot of Star Wars with great modern technology. It's going to feel a lot like the original. There's going to be... it's not going to feel groundbreaking. Rian Johnson is a groundbreaking director. He's artistic.
Yes.
He is
makes bold
daring.
choices. Yeah.
Yeah. And so having that sandwiched in between JJ movies that were really trying to just preserve what George had created this like just ugly discontinuity. And I wish they had just committed to someone early on.